Hey everybody, welcome to yet another MonoGame Live. We took a little break for summer. I know we said we were going to do one in August, but there were people on holiday and the sun was out, and even though we're programmers, we thought it might be a good idea to go out and enjoy it for a little bit. So there we go. So I'm joined this week with the MonoGame team lead, really. Tom Spillman. I couldn't really think of another way to say it there. I'm losing my mind. It's late here.
I don't know about that, but I'll take it, I guess.
How you doing, Tom? You okay?
All right. Busy. This is like the busy time of the year when you're shipping games.
I never thought that the summer would be a good time to ship games. I always thought it would be Christmas time would be the best time to ship games, but
well, I mean, this is when you have to start shipping.
Right.
Especially we work a lot in indie games, and like what you don't want for an indie game is you don't want to ship it in the middle of December, because that's when all the AAA titles are hitting. So you want a little bit Christmas or a little after. So you'll see a lot of indie titles come out like in November, September, October, November. And then you won't see any in December, and then you'll see some more in like January, February, March.
So if you're doing indie titles, basically the trick is to avoid the release schedules that AAA games have.
Right. I mean, AAA games do the same thing. They just avoid each other, right? They're like, well, don't ship Call of Duty on the same day as they're shipping Battlefield, right? They try to avoid each other that have good launch windows. Well, it's just smart as an indie not to launch your small indie game the same day Battlefield comes out or something. That's just a waste of your efforts.
Yeah, because no one's going to buy it. No one's going to tweet about it.
Right, exactly. Everybody's focused on something else. There's a little detail there, a little inside info.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, pay attention, guys. Tom's got plenty of experience in the games industry, so he is the fountain of knowledge as far as we're concerned. So we've had a busy summer, I have to say. MonoGame has been a hive of activity. One of the first things we did this summer, we moved the repo, didn't we? We're no longer hanging off the Mono organization. We're now our own organization completely, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we picked up the organization last year sometime after we kicked the squatter off of there. And then we've been waiting because we've been busy, and finally we pulled the trigger and moved it across.
Yeah, the big question is, obviously everything's fine. All the pull requests and everybody's branches were unaffected. I think one of the main reasons we did this was because there was some confusion that MonoGame only worked on Mono, that it didn't work on .NET and Win and all that kind of stuff. So I think this cleans up confusion. It is a separate project. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, with stuff like that, it was stuff like, well, you have to talk to Xamarin about MonoGame because, they own it, because they own Mono, and it's like there's a lot of confusion about what's what. And then it got even more confusing once the Xamarin Microsoft purchase occurred, right?
Yeah,
like,
what do you thought?
Does Microsoft now own MonoGame? What's going on with that? It's like, no. Lots of confusion.
I have to admit that I think there were a couple of excited people in Microsoft that wish that were true. I mean, it's okay because myself and Dominic Louis, we work for Microsoft now, so it's good that we're there. But having MonoGame as a separate project set in its own direction, it's always quite cool as well. Which means we can push it into areas that we might not normally be able to.
Right.
Which is it brings me on to some of the news that we've had this week. This is this week. I think I saw a tweet about TowerFall running on a certain console. Is that right?
Yep. Matt announced that TowerFall's coming to XboxOne. I think that's the first announcement of that. It's been something that's been a long time coming. He's announced it. He has a playable copy at this point. It's just there's not an announced release date on it just yet, but I'm sure that'll be coming in the before too long.
Okay, so I mean, just that I did see the picture of it running on the Xbox console, which is fantastic.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, do you know if that's using UWP or is it using the Brute tool that we spoke about in one of the last videos?
Yeah, it's using the transpiler, the cross compiler. technology, the same thing that's being used on Axiom Verge on Vita and TowerFall on Vita.
Ah, okay, that's cool. So how is Brute going anyway? Is that proceeding nicely? Are we any closer?
Still working.
Any closer?
Still work in progress. Getting more, complete every day. We're starting to let people use it internally to kind of test the tech out, and mostly to test, the one, and we're getting feedback, and at some point here, we'll be able to fully open source it.
Oh, that's excellent. That's really good news. So are you actually open to people getting in touch and kind of doing alpha testing at this point, or?
Oh, I mean, you can if you want, but for the most part, we're kind of picking and choosing a couple people at a time. There's not like a team of people here working on it. It's basically myself and Steve when he gets a chance. So we don't have like a ton of manpower to kind of support a bunch of people that are trying to use it. So at the moment, we're kind of just picking it, bringing in a couple people at a time, working with them closely, making sure that they understand how it works and they're not having trouble, and improving the doc. And I think it's a little bit more self-sufficient for people, or easier for people to get into. That's when we'll feel like, hey, it's time to really open source the whole thing.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll keep people posted on that as things progress. What other news have we got? Well, another biggie came out this month. Stardew Valley shipped on Mac and Linux, and that was a true MonoGame release. That one.
Yes, it uses MonoGame on both Mac and Linux. It uses the shared binary OpenGL stuff, correct?
Yeah. There's a lot of work by a lot of the contributors over the last month getting the desktop GL project all sorted that uses the SDL2 in the back end. That was a lot of that work has now been completed, and as far as I know, Stardew Valley is not the only one that uses that tech. Neurovoid was released today or yesterday. That's using that tech. Yeah, was it yesterday? Was it? So big congratulations to Mr. Helmet on that release and his team, and that uses the desktop GL stuff as well. And we've been hearing nothing but good reports about its how it's working, which is quite cool. So I mean, Stardew Valley, that was a big indie hit last year, wasn't it? Or was it this year?
Oh yeah, this year. Yeah, I mean, they sold millions of copies. The thing was a pretty huge hit on Steam, so a lot of people are very excited about seeing it on Mac and Linux finally.
Excellent, yeah. So I did see there was a lot of excitement about that, which is quite cool.
Neurovoider, Thomas over there, Mr. Helmet, he also contributed a lot of code back to the MonoGame implementation for Mac and Linux. So that helped tremendously. And then the other game that's using it right now is Raining Blobs, if I remember correctly. It's using it using the OpenGL path and the shared binary, I believe, for Mac and Linux as well.
Okay, that's quite interesting. I knew Raining Blobs was on XboxOne, and that's using the UWP path, I think.
Yeah, that's the latest news for him, is he's working on the XboxOne release using the UWP path.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I've been messing around with the Xbox One myself, and I did manage to port the old XNA sample Vector Rumble to UWP and had it running on my Xbox One. Yeah.
Cool. So when do you ship it to the store?
Well, I just need to figure out how to ship it to the store, and I know I'll ship it to the store. Right. I'm already on the ID program.
Well, if it already runs on UWP, you can at least ship it to the Win 10 store, right?
You know what? I could. That's a very good point.
It technically would work on Windows 10. It'll work on Windows Mobile, on tablets.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I know Dominic, it was the port that Dominic did a while back, and I know he's got some stuff in there for touch, but I haven't enabled it. So I'll have to have a play with it and see if I can get that working.
That'd be the one, yeah. I mean, that'd be the one thing you'd have to do in order to be able to ship to the Windows Store, is add some touch support so that you can support tablet form factors and phones and stuff.
I think the plan for this was a little test project for me. I wanted to take a game and ship it everywhere, and I'm going to open source it. I'm doing localization on it as well. It's actually available on the Mac store, believe it or not. That
Oh,
went through this week, which quite surprised me because it's using the desktop GL, the desktop GL side of things, which means it's SDL window, all that kind of stuff, and that made it through. So that's available on the Mac Store as well now. So as soon as I've got this working in various places, I'm going to publish the whole lot so people can take a look at its full game sample project. It's going to have localization, the whole works. So we'll keep an eye out for that. What else was in the news? Let's have a look. I've got a whole load of tweets here and various bits, but I'm just going to share my screen first. There we go. So we've covered Stardew Valley. So if anyone's interested, they can just go to stardewvalley.net, which is good. Neurovoider is neurovoider.com. And that's pretty cool. So we'll go and have a look. One other thing that popped up on Steam Greenlight is Little Kingdom. This is it's a MonoGame app apparently. It's kind of like a RTS, but looks of things. All that kind of thing. It looks kind of cute. So something to look at.
I'll make sure that all these links get added to the YouTube description when the video finally posts.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure I don't close all these tabs. get rid of the stuff. One other thing is I noticed is Simon Darkside Jackson, who's a long-time MonoGame enthusiast, has started a YouTube channel called The Darkside of MonoGame. Now, looking at it, it seems to be this is more about tutorials on MonoGame rather than the insidious stuff that the MonoGame team does behind the scenes to take over the planet. So that's pretty good. So keep an eye out for that. He's only got two videos up there at the moment. One doing what looks like the Monty Python Solidarity Salute. Nice one, Simon. But yeah, I mean, keep an eye on that. He's going to be doing some video tutorials. He does a lot of blogs on the subject as well, so shout out to him. A couple of other mentions social media wise. Don't forget there's a Facebook page for those of you that are on Facebook called MonoGame Community. So go and hit out that. And I found this the other day. There's actually a MonoGame Indie Devs channel on Facebook as well. Right. So if you're a Facebook person and you want to go and ask questions and you don't want to use the community forums, which is I'd advise you to because it's pretty good. Go and hang out there, which is quite nice. So so there we go. So lots of stuff going on.
Polymers.
Lots and lots of stuff. Hopefully my screen was visible then.
Yeah, I
it
saw
was.
It.
Yeah, that's good.
I saw it. I don't know about anybody else.
You saw it. Okay, so obviously we're going to talk a little bit about Desktop GL this time round. Well, I know we've mentioned it a little bit already, but perhaps it might be worthwhile just telling people how that differs from say the direct export or the old OpenTK side of things that we used to have. If you know. I know.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you make me say it. Okay.
No, that's all right.
The main thing is just that for a long time we used OpenTK. We were considering dropping it like 2 years ago, I think, and suddenly the OpenTK maintainer came out of retirement, I guess, and said, no, I'm going to fix it. We're going to move it to GitHub and fix it up and make it work. And some progress was made and some improvements were made, but at the end of the day, 2 years later, it was just still had lots of problems. It wasn't as consistent as it could be. And, we kind of had this feeling of the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing with SDL. So we to basically gut all the OpenTK stuff out and replace it with an SDL2 backend, some native bindings to OpenGL and native bindings to OpenAL, and all combined having a new backend that so far has proven to be more reliable than the OpenTK, but still has some quirks. We're still fighting some things with SDL2 where the SDL2 team has some bugs that we're working around at the moment, but in general it's tremendously better, and that's what's in the Stardew Valley Mac and Linux port. That's what's in Neurovoider and Raining Blobs on Mac and Linux on Steam. So it's still pretty new, but it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and basically, if you build the XE on a well, if you're using desktop GL and you build the XE on Windows, that XE will run on Mac and Linux as well. And you can reuse all your content because we optimize it for the OpenGL backend and all that kind of stuff. So that's not available in the 3.5 release at the moment, but it is available either on the develop branch, or if you want to, you can go to monogame.net downloads, scroll down to the bottom, and there's a section for the unstable development installers which we produce. You can just download those and start playing with it, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
That was a big effort by quite a few contributors, me included. I was the nut job that decided to write the OpenAL bindings.
Yeah.
I don't know what possessed me to do that, but
hey, but it's done, and it's all in one place, and we can share it on every platform.
Yep.
What's the status on? I was going to ask, what's the status on that on iPhone and Android?
Yeah, so I've got a branch in my own fork, which has OpenTK ripped out of iOS and Android. I got to the point the other week, I haven't been able to work on it since, where I had a cornflower blue screen on iOS using our own bindings, which is quite cool. Haven't tested it on Android yet, but it is coming, people. We're going to have our own, get rid of OpenTK completely, and we'll have our own bindings, which is quite cool.
I mean, technically the OpenTK there is a little different in that the OpenTK there is the one provided by Xamarin. It's not. The OpenTK we were using on the desktop was one that we had to provide and had to, distribute. The other one is like just part of the Xamarin time.
Well, the good news of that is I actually wrote some of the Android game view stuff for Xamarin.
Okay, so you know where the bodies are buried.
I know where the bodies are buried on that one. Yeah, along with a few other team members. One of the old employees, Shana, I can't remember her full name now, but she did the original game view, and I took it on when I joined Xamarin, and fixed quite a few bugs. So, and it's all been open sourced as well, which is good. Right. So we've got full control over which bits. I actually have. Go for it.
I was going to say, I think the important part of it is that, since we have our own bindings, we can make sure that we can write bindings that are 100% cross-platform, especially for OpenGL and OpenAL, where, we don't have to, this vendor has a binding for OpenAL for their platform, and this vendor has a binding for OpenAL for their platform, and but they slightly differ, and we have problems, and our code has to be messy because of it. Instead, now you have one set of bindings that we can tightly control and use on every platform that's OpenGL and OpenAL. Yeah,
I mean the code base. Looking at the code base in the Android and iOS branch that I have, the only ifs we've got for the OpenGL side of things is the Mono Mac stuff. And and interestingly, the fact that I've managed to publish the Vector Rumble, which uses desktop GL, on the Mac store, it's perfectly possible we can actually ditch that side of the port as well. We might be able to remove the custom windowing that we've got under Mac and just use SDL under the back end, under the hood, which would make more sense, because then we can share pretty much all the OpenGL code, because we've got our own bindings, we've got our own windowing systems, and there's only a few little bits that we'd need to if-def out or have partial classes for. So it's a pretty exciting time. The code base is going to look a lot cleaner when we're done.
Yeah, exactly. Tremendous work you guys have been doing on that. It's going to be fantastic.
Just need time to finish it now.
Yeah.
I should stop publishing things on the Mac store and Xbox and start
part of the experiment
off, shouldn't I? Yeah, you have to play, don't you? If you don't play, you get bored with stuff. Okay, so topic-wise,
we're talking about the OpenGL.
Yeah, we're talking about the OpenGL stuff. A couple of these games that we talked about, Stardew Valley and Neurovoid, have published on Steam, haven't they? So we might I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to talk about the kind of stuff that people need to do to get stuff working on Steam.
Right. For Steam publishing.
Yeah, because
at the same time, at some point you guys are planning to also release a document, right? We talked about that at one point, talking about Steam releases.
Yeah. I'm one of the reasons why I did the Vector Rumble release and all that kind of stuff was to gain experience in creating Mac packages and learning to use a runtime called MonoKickstarter or MonoKickstart, which is basically a project that was started by the guys from Bastion when they wanted to release Bastion on the Mac. And it's effectively an embedded Mono runtime, because one of the things you have to remember when you're shipping on Steam is that Mono is not going to be there. It's not going to be available. So you have to ship the runtime yourself with it. So it's almost like you're embedding the .NET or the Mono runtime into your package effectively. And fortunately, there's a repo on the MonoGame organization called MonoKickstarter or MonoKickstart, sorry, and that has a bunch of binaries and a bunch of, like, you got the system DLL, your MS core lib and all that kind of stuff. And what you can do is you can take that and then use that to build the package that you need to ship on Steam. It's a really cool tech. There's been lots of contributors. Ethan Lee's contributed to it. He did a lot of work because obviously he does a lot of Steam ports. There's a branch that I've been working on which upgrades it from Mono 4.2 or 4.1. It's quite an old version of Mono to the new Mono 4.6, which is hot off the presses. And yeah, so it definitely have a look at that. I'll just share my screen so people can see the link. Let's see if we can get this up here. Yeah, let's share that. Okay, can you see that, Tom?
Yes.
Should be able to see that. Okay, so there we go. So there's the MonoGame fork of the MonoKickstart thing. And what we provide is that there's the actual source code, so you can go and mess with the source code if you want, but we've got all these binaries, and the MonoGame guys, we've been trying to update this if we can to fix a few bits and pieces. And the way this works is you end up with, you've got this shell script here, which is called Kick, that you rename to be the name of your app. So in the case of Stardew Valley, we rename this to Stardew Valley. And then we've got these Kick bin binaries, which is for Mac, and then we've got 2 for Linux. And what you do is you then rename these ones to be stardewvalley.bin.osx, stardewvalley.bin.x86. And then you finally have your executable for your game, which in this case is called stardewvalley.exe. So you bundle all your content and the exe into the same directory as these. You rename these Kick scripts, and then you run the Kick this script here, the Kick script, and that will launch these two the appropriate bin for the operating system that you're on, and that contains the embedded Mono runtime, which then loads your exe into that Mono runtime, and then your game runs, which is quite good. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try and document all of this so it's nice and easy. We might even, personally, I think we should be writing a little tool for people that will generate this stuff for you. So you can just say, okay, package this. This is the exe, or this is the folder. I want to package it for Steam now, and it will spit you out. Yeah, there you go. Everything's done. So if anyone in the community really fancies having a go at that, go for it.
I mean, it's specifically packaging for Steam. You know, that's. I mean, there's also Steam's own packaging tools and stuff like that. So you know, the question will be is like, how much of this is just packaging for Kickstart versus packaging for Steam? So hard to say.
Yeah, I mean,
and some of this also, the same thing also works on good old games, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this framework here that I'm looking at, the MonoKickstart stuff, is not just for Steam. This will basically allow your app to run on any Linux box and any Mac, any OS X box, effectively. So if you want to publish through Good Old Games or self-publish even, or chuck it through Steam, this is what you'll need to use. Because if you don't use this, you'll have to, on Mac, you'd have to use either Xamarin Mac or something like that, or on Linux, you'd have to tell the user to install Mono themselves. Now, historically, Linux users haven't really liked Mono that much, from what I remember, but that might have changed. But yeah, I'd certainly.
I think when it comes to games, they don't discriminate.
Yeah, they probably don't care. It's like, yeah, it's a game. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just don't write me apps with Mono on them. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yes, definitely have a look at this. This is we'll try and improve the documentation so people can do that. The other thing to point out is if you are releasing on Steam, it's worth. There is a thing called Steamworks.net, which is a C# wrapper. For the Steam APIs, effectively. So if you want to get the overlay and all that kind of stuff, this is what you need to deal with it. I think we managed to.
And that's cross-platform, right?
Yeah, it's cross-platform. You do need to. There is a. I'm trying to remember where it is now. There is a. See, a lot of this is dealt with Unity, but yeah. So.
It's the same sort of. I mean, it's just that it's C#. So.
Yeah. So in this repo, we've got, for example, you've got the C Steamworks bundle, which is the Mac bundle, and then we've got the DLLs for Linux and Windows there. So basically, you want to go to this site and grab hold of this, and then you can start integrating the Steam overlays into your app. So once again, we'll publish all of these links and everything on the site, on the YouTube video once it goes live, so that people don't lose out on stuff, which is quite good. But it is an interesting experience publishing on Steam, from what I've heard. I don't know too much about the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's. It looks daunting at first when you get into it, but it's actually not too difficult to get into. You just kind of have to read they have some good documentation on there. I believe the site is it .steamworks.com or something like that. It's free to sign up. You don't have to be a developer actually to sign up, so you can sign up there, look and figure out and learn how it all works. So it's definitely worth doing that ahead of time. They have their own tools for packaging and things like that. You actually have to learn a little bit, but they actually provide some YouTube videos for all that stuff. So you can go and watch their YouTube videos of how the packaging works and everything. And before you know it, you'll figure it out. It's not too difficult.
Okay, cool. Am I still correct in saying that you can't just sign up for an account and publish a game on Steam? It needs to be greenlit or something, doesn't it? You have to have community votes?
Yes, there's still a process of being approved. Yeah, there's still a process of being approved to release on Steam. You can sign up for the developer program and see the docs and read about it, but to actually publish a game there, you have to get approved by them. Greenlight is one process to doing it. There's also just a process of just contacting them saying, hey, I want to release my game on Steam, and talking to them like that. They might redirect indies straight to the greenlight process, or depending on what your title is, if we really want to add it, you might be able to circumvent it as well. So it just depends.
Oh, okay. So more than likely, you're going to be having a game that's fairly near the end of its, fairly near the release before you can start doing that process, I guess.
Not really. I mean, there are games that have been on, that were greenlit with just, a video and a little bit of content, not really much more. So there are games that have been in early access for a year plus, while they were still being developed and expanded out. So the rules are a little different now than they used to be. You don't have to be like, hey, my game's almost done, it's time to talk to them about putting it on Steam. You really should try to put it up, start integrating into Steam as soon as you can, and consider whether a Steam early access is worth it for your title. I think a lot of developers find that useful because they get feedback from early adopters that are very excited about the game and are willing to give you their feedback. I think it helps.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's kind of an interesting process. Perhaps I should try and get Vector Rumble on Steam.
We'll see. That might be a tricky one.
Yeah, it's a demo. I'm surprised it got onto the Mac store, to be honest, but there we go. I took a shot. It worked.
Right.
It's free, by the way. I'm not making any money off it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look. We've got a whole bunch of questions by the looks of things, which is great.
Do it.
So I'm going to start at the bottom. Kara's got a question. I work with MonoDevelop 5.10 with MonoGame on Ubuntu 16.04. Excellent. Okay, we like having Linux developers. Nice one. So it's not really a question; it's a statement. Thank you for that. One of our community members, Crazy or Harry, he put a lot of effort into getting the Linux installer and stuff working nicely. So thanks, Harry, for doing that. You're awesome. Which is quite good. Okay, here's an interesting one from Dominic. When is the next MonoGame release due out?
As soon as I have more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I guess. I don't know. We've been needing to push it out for a while. There were a couple things that were kind of outstanding that seemed like we needed to really fix before we were done. For a little while, I was being blocked by wanting to complete the work on the unified backend. But I think kind of we're at a point where we could do it at this point. There is not any big there aren't any big holes in it where like this is completely bugged out. There are a couple things with the pipeline tool that we probably need to address. But in general, it could be anytime soon. It's just mostly that, unfortunately, I've just been so tied up with stuff, and I've been mostly the person that's managed the releases at this point. That it's just been difficult to say, okay, it's time to push it out. And even though we've added a ton of unit tests and people have been helping tremendously on it, it's still not a situation where we can just, hey, we're going to publish this and we're confident that the thing is working properly. So there's still a little bit of manual testing and checking before we can submit, so it takes a little time. But we're getting better at it. The hope is to get a build out here, or a new release out here soon. We'll probably have to discuss it a little bit and see if there are any really high priority tasks that are left in the 3.6 milestone that really need to be addressed before we can move on.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, I know one thing that's on the to-do list and is upgrading the Mac bot.
Right, because the
Xamarin Studio
with Xamarin Studio 6, right?
Yeah. So I know that's on the to-do list. And I think there were some issues with the pipeline tool on Mac that need fixing up. You mentioned unit tests earlier. I'd just like to give a shout out to Jesse, I think his name is. JJag is the username.
Yes.
He's been putting a lot of effort into unit tests last month or so. So thanks for your help on that.
And improvements and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's just been the last couple of weeks. He's been doing some tremendous work there. So that's been awesome. I'm hoping that he can, keep that enthusiasm up and keep the pace with that stuff, because there's tons of little things like that he's been addressing that have helped tremendously.
Yeah, I seem to remember I used to have that kind of enthusiasm when I started, but it's been 5 or 6 years now, and we're still doing it.
Hey, the fact that we're still doing it means we have some enthusiasm, right?
Yeah, I know, but
lesser people would have, given up by now.
Yeah, but I don't know if you remember, but in the early days, I was working a full day job and then starting MonoGame at say 7 o'clock at night and working through until 2 in the morning every day.
Yeah.
But we obviously don't do that much anymore. But there we go, which is quite cool. Okay, so what other questions have we got here? Okay, how to start entrepreneur with MonoGame, what tools for developing using open source because we're indies. That's from Kyra. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Kyra. Well, to be fair, MonoGame is open source, so there's no cost for that, so that's quite cool. Visual Studio Community is free. So if you're just getting started, you can either use Visual Studio Community Edition. MonoGame works perfectly with that. I'd highly recommend developing a targeting UWP maybe to start off with, or Desktop GL, which is what we've been talking about on Windows. It's really easy to get started. More recently, because of the takeover of Xamarin by Microsoft, all the Xamarin tooling because you're an indie, because you're a small team, all of that will be free as well. So you can target Android. If you can afford to get a Mac, you'll then be able to target iOS and Mac as well. But you do need a Macintosh to do that. Unfortunately, that's one of Apple's requirements. But yeah, everything is free. Community edition is pretty cool. I personally use Xamarin Studio on the Mac, which is quite nice. I think
what we've done over here with iOS and Mac development is use Visual Studio with the connection that Xamarin Studio has with Visual Studio, where you can basically, I guess it basically sends your code, piles it over there, and brings it back, after it does the compilation. Is that correct? I think that's what it does on iOS. And you can even see the iOS simulator on your Windows box as it's being remoted from your Mac box.
Yeah, that was a new thing they released in Xamarin Evolve 2016, which was really, really nice being able to see the simulator. But effectively, you can get away if you just want to get a cheap second-hand Mac Mini, and use that as your build system, and put the Xcode tooling on that. As long as it can run Xcode, the latest Xcode, you should be okay. So have that, and then you can do all of your work in Visual Studio. I don't think there's a restriction on the remoting side of things in Visual Studio Community. It just works. As long as your team is below a certain size, all the tooling is free. So, but yeah, I mean, that might be an option. Just get a nice cheap little Mac Mini. I've got a Mac Mini sitting upstairs that I use for that kind of stuff. And it's just doesn't cost you a thing. And it doesn't matter how big you are. We still won't cost you anything.
Yeah, it's all open source at this point.
Yeah. And you've got and the code's there. It's just fork it. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, Dominic wants to know, was ARMed ever published on Steam? Tom, did you ever publish ARM on Steam?
No, we never published on Steam. Actually, we submitted to Greenlight like maybe 2 weeks after Greenlight was a thing, like when Greenlight first started. And it was when the bad days of Greenlight, where, if you posted anything that was like even resembling something that was a mobile title, it would immediately get completely downvoted. It was chaos. Like the Steam fanboys were like, if it's not a AAA shooter with military people in it running around, then I don't care what it is. It's garbage. So it got downvoted a lot, and it took a long time. It was on Steam Greenlight for like over a year before it got greenlighted. And by the time it got greenlighted, we're too busy on other projects, and it's not making as much money as we want it to. So it's just not worth our time. We just moved on. So that was our first experience in Greenlight, and it was horrible. But that also was like the first year that Greenlight existed. So everything was kind of horrible. It's been much better since then.
Well, yeah, hopefully things have. There have been some few good games that I know have been greenlit. Pixel Blocked, which is, I believe that's an old XNA game that might be coming out on. I've heard that's coming out for iOS and Android soon. That was greenlit on Steam, which is quite cool. And I think Stardew Valley was greenlit as well, if I remember rightly. I could be wrong about that.
Greenlight thing or not, but yeah, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. We'll have to think about that one. Okay. Keck, another question. Do you guys still work with the desktop DirectX still? I don't know what changed, but the newer versions can't seem to load FX files for me anymore. SharpDX. Is this only me? I don't actually get involved in the DirectX stuff. That's more Tom's.
Yeah, I mean,
Tom's area.
Well, yes, we still use it. That's like the core. I mean, the same code that's used on the desktop is the same code that's used for UWP. It's the same code that's used for, every DirectX platform that we have. So it's still used, yes. It won't load FX files. I assume what you mean is you're having trouble compiling your FX file. There were a couple changes that occurred there that were like, technically we had a couple things that worked, but were not done to improve that. And I think in that process, maybe you're running into problems with that. If you look, probably have to look up the link, but what is it? basically there were a couple changes that might be affecting a person there, but they're not anything major. It's basically like, oh, you need to put a V under this, and it's something silly like that. Not like, oh no, major technical problem. It's just something dumb like that. Unfortunately, the compiler doesn't give you a very good result. Like, hey, this is exactly what's wrong. It just tells you it's wrong.
Yeah, it's not very good. Not very good error messages.
Yeah,
I did notice.
The best thing you could really do is to, if you're having problems with the effect compiler, just post an issue on GitHub. Post an issue, say, hey, I'm trying to compile this effect, it doesn't work. This is the error that's telling me. Don't just say it doesn't work. Tell us the error message that it's giving you. Give us the shader code that's failing, and we can look at it and take a look and say like, oh, this is what you're missing.
If it is proprietary shader code that you don't want to share, you can always post the issue, and then just like ping Tom or one of the core team and say, I really don't want to publish this shader publicly, and then share it with us internally. We're pretty good with stuff like that. I did notice a little while ago, if you're using the content pipeline from Stable and you're trying to use the develop branch DLLs, there is a difference. You might get an error about the version of the shader. You have to have matching tooling. So if you're going to use the develop branch to develop your game, you need to use the develop branch tooling to compile the shaders as well, because there's a mismatch. You'll get sort of errors. It will be a very obvious errors like the version. I can't load this version of the shader. So just watch out for that as well if you can.
That's a bit me.
Yeah, it bit me a few times. The remote effect processor that I did that's running in Azure for Mac users. Yeah, I tried to use that on a project the other day, and I was using the develop branch, and I hit that exact problem. Because the pipeline tool in Azure is running Stable, not develop. So perhaps I should update that so you can either use develop or Stable, depending on what you're compiling for. Okay, so we've got another question. Skello, hopefully I think I pronounced that right. Why does MonoGame just want to be a simple rendering framework instead of a fully featured game framework like libgdx? Not an engine, just a set of tools. So why don't we want to be a game engine?
Well, I mean, I think it's different than the question he's asking, but we can start there. Why don't we want to be a game engine? Because the second that we're a game engine, then everybody has a lot of opinions on how things should work. There are a million different ways to build a game engine, and everybody has an opinion on what the best path is. By not jumping into that, mess, MonoGame allows itself to just be, hey, we're a low-level library. We just give you access to the hardware. We just try to abstract the hardware as simply as possible in order for you to build games, and you can build stuff on top of it however you want. So we don't tell you how your game objects have to work. They don't have to be, oh, I don't like my game objects called components. I like to call them actors, or I don't like I call them actors. I like to call them, entities. It's like you don't have to have that stupid battle. You can build all that your game stuff however you like. We're just providing the low-level hardware abstraction, which is what you really need at the end of the day, because the game can be built a million different ways. Because at the same time, not only is it just personal opinion, it's also what's convenient for your game and how your gameplay works. There are a lot of times that people struggle trying to say, how do I make this work within something like Unity, because it's kind of very component-based, and you kind of do things sometimes that are not ideal in order to make it work. Unity has done a lot of work towards supporting 2D, but it's been a very difficult thing for Unity because it doesn't really fit in how their system works. So we're not providing a fixed system that now has to adapt to every possible game. We're just giving you hardware, a platform abstraction that gives you the basis to build your game on top of. Now, as far as why aren't we more like libgdx? I can't say that. I spent a lot of time messing with libgdx. To me, I think we're similar in that they're providing a library that gives you hardware abstractions and some basic tooling for you to be able to do stuff. We could provide some basic tooling. We have the pipeline. We have simple you render sprites, but we don't define what your sprite should be other than give us a rectangle, give us a texture, there's your sprite, So we're sort of, I think we're more similar to libgdx than we are to something like Unity or Game Engine. But we're lower level because it makes it easier for us to support and lets us work on the part that is the most important part, which is the abstraction of the hardware. All the gameplay stuff, how you want to design your game engine, how you want to load your data files and organize your game systems, that's all up to you. You can decide how you want to do that. So in a lot of ways, we're more flexible I think a lot of times you'll find that people that are more programmer centric tend to prefer things like LiveGDX or MonoGame or XNA. But if you're more like design centric, a lot of times people would choose something like Unity, where it's a little bit more I'm going to drag this object here and enable physics on it and tweak the physics value on it. And so it's a little bit more, I guess, artist driven or more content, driven than, programmer driven.
Yeah.
And also just because our history comes from XNA, that's how XNA was. So that's how we plan to do it. I mean, the XNA team, I think, did talk at one time about like considering the possibility of adding more higher level tools. But they ran into the same problem. Like there's a million different ways that can be done. So they'd have to pick a direction and stick to it and hope that direction doesn't alienate, percentage of their audience, right? That wants to do it a different way. So I think we're happy where we're at. I don't think it's going to change. Engine development is also very expensive and hard. And it'd be trying to do that as open source like this would be very difficult. That's why there's 50 different game engines out there, because everybody wants to take a different path. So I think we're good where we're at. And plus, we'd also be, screwing people like that have done game engines on top of MonoGame. If MonoGame suddenly became a game engine, now we're competing with every engine that uses MonoGame. So it's like I don't think it's worth it. End of the day, if you want to build a game engine, use MonoGame as your abstraction. And there's several of those out there that are doing that at the moment. I think those are where you'd want to look if you wanted something more like a game engine.
Yeah,
what is it? Mono Extended. That's MonoGame Extended. That is just basically some additional higher level things like tile maps and things like that are on top of MonoGame. It still isn't a full game engine, but it's just more utilities and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Mono Extended was one of the ones I was thinking of. Coco Sharp is another one. That's released by Xamarin. That's built on top of MonoGame. There was a list posted. I can't remember whether it was on Twitter or Facebook. Hopefully Dominic will be able to let us know. But someone actually pulled together a list of a whole bunch of sort of like resources for MonoGame, and one of them was a lot of the 3D or 2D engines that have been built on top of MonoGame. Flat Red Ball is one that comes to mind. There's another one called NES, and
yes,
there's basically quite a few. So we'll try and dig out that list and post that on the video chat, on the video description, so that you can have a look. They're all good engines, and like I said, they're built on top of MonoGame, so that's always a good thing, which is quite cool. So let's move on. Do we have any recommendations for audio engines and plugins? I don't, because I just use MonoGame, and MonoGame now has, thanks to Tom, MonoGame has fairly decent XAC support, which is Microsoft's cross-platform audio creation tool. So that's pretty good. I know a lot of people use Fmod, but I believe there's a cost involved in that. So I don't have any recommendations for audio engines. Tom, do you?
I mean, I think there's three paths, right? Like the first path is you roll your own audio engine, using just the low-level MonoGame sound effect system, right? You load a sound effect, you play it, you write some wrapper around it that either virtualizes it so you can, have a limited amount of actual voices, but, lots of virtual voices, or you provide systems to randomize between several different gunshot sounds when you call, play my gunshot. You can roll your own. Another option is the XAC support. Our XAC support has gotten better. The Stardew Valley work on some other games coming to consoles has allowed us to improve some of our spend time, paid time basically, because we were working on ports to improve the low-level exec support, and so it's better. And the exec support now supports a lot of the effects that you didn't used to, like now supports reverbs. It now supports low pass and high pass filtering, which it didn't support, before that, and it supports it on the Mac, on the OpenAL path as well as the DirectX path. So that was a big improvement. And the nice thing about Exact, there's already an Exact tool. You can load it up, set up your Exact banks, and then play queues, and it works. So that's one path. Fmod is really the only third path. Like, I don't know of another thing like Fmod or Exact. Fmod totally can work with MonoGame. There's not a reason it can't. There is an existing C# Fmod binding out there, just like there's a C# binding for Steamworks. There's a C# binding for Fmod's library, basically. So you use that Fmod binding, you make your wave banks in Fmod, and you call that binding and say, hey, play this queue, play that queue. It totally will work. And it'll work with every platform that Fmod supports, which is, I think, all of them, basically Mac, Linux, Windows, all the consoles. So it would totally work. And I think I know of at least one MonoGame title that's using Fmod on consoles. So I know that it's doable.
I know.
So yeah, those are the basic paths.
Yeah, I know there's they might even work on Android as well. Not too sure about iOS. Mike has just mentioned that Fmod for Indie is free, so there you go. So that might be free if you're using that one. The only downside I see with using Exact is that the creation tool is Windows only. If there was a cross-platform version of that would be great. But then again, it might work under Wine. I've not tried it, but you never know. It might work under Wine. If someone feels like recreating Exact to work on Mac and Linux as well, then
come talk to us. There's 50 different little projects around Exact and support on MonoGame that we could do that totally interesting and fun, and extending it. And I mean, Exact at this point is like over 10 years old. It was kind of like, I think it shipped a little bit before, like a couple months before Fmod was even a thing. So those libraries are really, really old. Microsoft's kind of dropped support for Exact completely at this point. They don't develop anymore, so it's kind of like a stale technology at this point. But it's still really good. It was ahead of its time. And then Fmod kind of proves it, and like almost every game engine now uses Fmod or has support for it. Or something very similar to it if they built their own. Like I believe like Unreal and Unity have their own kind of Fmod-ish sort of systems. There's tons of projects around improving our Exact support. Heck, I mean, if there was if everybody knows of a good Fmod binding, it would probably be good to link that somehow, so so people can find that in those cases. But also, this is the benefit of not having an engine, right? If we had an engine and decided, hey, Exact's the only way it works, you'd be
stuck,
screwed, right?
Yeah.
So,
That's
I don't
one
like
benefit.
Exact, so can't use MonoGame. So it's like, well, no, you have options. So I think that's helpful.
Dominic has just posted the list, which is called Awesome MonoGame, and it contains a bunch of various links for resources and engines and all that kind of stuff. So I've posted that in the Jitter channel. For those of you who don't know, just go to jitter.im/monogame/monogame. That's the Jitter channel. It's our chat channel. So feel free to join in the chat there. I've posted that in there. We'll also post that on the. Yeah, I've posted it in the chat in the channel. It's quite good. Okay, we've only got a couple of questions left. One is from Mike. He missed the beginning, and he only just realised that you're planning to open source the transpiler. So he's very happy about that by the looks of things.
Yeah, we're totally planning on that. I mean, that was the plan from the beginning. It's been a tremendous job to make that work. It's been interesting because I know all the work that it actually does to make it easy for you to develop. You gain some respect for the system once you kind of dig into the internals of it. And you also learn a lot about or do that again, because that's stupid expensive. because I know exactly how that has to be implemented on the back end. So it's really interesting work from that point of view. But the original goal, we built it just from our own frustration of trying to get titles to consoles where it was like, well, you can't use C# on this console because there's no runtime there, and Microsoft's not providing it, and Xamarin's too busy or not providing it. So even if you did try to do it yourself and port Mono to the platform and could figure out how to do it, then you still have to have a licensing battle, to decide can I get this license to do this, and all those frustrations kind of led down the path of we had to do something to kind of basically unshackle the ability to use C# and MonoGame on these consoles. So the idea kind of stemmed from like seeing that original Unity demo, or not Unity, it was an Unreal demo that was like Unreal running in the web browser using the ASM.js stuff, where basically they cross-compiled C++ code version of Unreal Engine over to JavaScript and then run in the browser. So once I saw that and started having these frustrations with Mono and running C# on consoles, it kind of like the two clicked, and it's like I could do the same thing for C#. I can write a compiler that converts C# to C++, compiles it using the native compiler for that platform, and have it run. So that was 2 years ago, and now I realize how foolish I was that I could do all that work and be no problem. It wasn't a problem. It was a problem. It was a lot of work to get it to function, but it's functioning, which is awesome. We share games with it.
Yeah.
So, but from the very beginning, from day one when I started it, it wasn't like, okay, now how do I monetize this? It was just like, I want to get it done and make it open source because other people contribute to it, improve it. And at the end of the day, I just wanted to kind of unlock the ability for people to use C# as a game development language and not be constrained by, I can't use C# because I can't go to this platform or that platform.
Yeah, I mean,
with this, there should be no limitations.
Yeah, even though Mono's licensing has changed now, so you can actually do this stuff for free. It's still difficult to port this stuff because some of these platforms, they don't support JIT, so you have to use an ahead of time compiler and all this kind of all these kind of things. Issues come up. So I still think it's valid technology. It's very exciting.
Absolutely, and even more, like, when we started this, the idea, if you said, all of .NET and all of Xamarin's stuff is going to be all open source, because that was not even a thought at the time. It wasn't until like 6-7 months later after we started it that Microsoft open sourced .NET in a big way. Tremendously useful for me because I can directly, like, we're integrating Microsoft's garbage collector into our thing on all these platforms. Why? Because it's open source and we can. It's the license is forgiving. We can do that, and we're going to be using these platforms. So yeah, those things all became open source, but it's still valid because trying to port those things to a new platform is a huge undertaking on its own. I mean, Microsoft, they open sourced it. There wasn't Mac and Linux support. There is now. A while to get there. So adding every console is difficult, and Nintendo's going to be releasing the NX next year. How long before you're going to port Mono or Microsoft's .NET to NX? Like, could take quite a while. With the tech that we have, it could be generating C++ code that'll compile using, whatever Nintendo's compiler is, like almost immediately. So it's a pretty big jump that you get on it. Plus, at the end of the day, the one thing that those JITs can't do is, in order to generate optimal code for a particular piece of hardware, it has to really know how to generate that optimal code. It's like you can't just write general x86 code and have it work just as fast everywhere. You kind of have to tune it for the platform. And one of the things the compiler vendor or the console vendors all do is they all have very specialized hardware, and they make sure that their compilers are optimized to target that hardware. Well, the JIT isn't optimized to target particular hardware unless someone spends that time. And that's another thing, other than just getting it to run, making sure it runs efficiently. So by generating C++ code and compiling it, it actually gives you that extra optimization.
Yeah.
So there's some there is some benefits to it just as it is. My hope is that it's totally unnecessary in a couple of years because it's very easy to get, Microsoft.NET running on every single platform very quickly. But until we're at that utopia, this is the stopgap that ensures that it works wherever it can occur. If somebody releases but it only has a native SDK, we could actually support it there. Yeah. So it's tremendously flexible, and that was always the goal.
I think Mike's very excited about this. He's just asked when any idea when you're going to open source it.
I'm hoping for this year. As soon as we feel like as soon as you start seeing the different Wii U games that are being worked, like as soon as you see Stardew Valley out on Wii U and on Xbox One and on PS4 and on Vita and all that stuff, when you start seeing them all on these platforms, that's when by that time I'll probably be, okay, this is mature enough, it's time that we can open source it. I probably could open source it a lot sooner, but it was just like, you always have this battle of like, this is ugly, this is inefficient, this can be done better. So we're constantly trying to improve the thing to release it. I mean, even though it works, it doesn't work the best possible way that it could. So we're still making improvements, and the biggest thing is workflow, like figuring out how to best situate it so that, I mean, in the ideal world, you just have your C# AOT compile it with our transpiler, and you check that off and you hit compile, and it would compile and hit it 5 and run, and it runs on your console and it's all done. Well, it's not that smooth of a process yet. It's more like, okay, after you compile your C# code, you have to generate the C++ code, and you have to launch that project and build that, and then it can deploy the console. So we're trying to make that a smoother process, and that just, we're just starting to do that now.
That's just going to take time.
Yeah.
Well, it's all good. It's all exciting stuff, which is quite cool. We got one last question, and then I think we're going to call it a night because, yes, I scheduled once again for half an hour, and we're now an hour and 5 minutes. So this last question isn't really a question. It's from ND. I think I pronounced that right. Hey guys, yes, Raining Blobs is shared desktop GL project running with no issues on PC, Mac, and Linux. Thanks for your awesome work. You're very welcome, and I'm hoping that Raining Blobs is a success on all of those games. And thank you for the kind words. It's not just us. We've had over 200 people contribute to MonoGame in the last 6 years. Some are still here. Some have moved on to other things, but we wouldn't be here without that community effort. So thanks to everybody that's worked on the project in the last 6 years, or even before then, when it was still, I don't know, XNA Touch or Sprite Kit or whatever it was called beforehand. So it's an awesome community. Keep up the good work, guys. And I haven't really got anything else to talk about. Tom, are you any words of wisdom? Final words of wisdom?
No. Go out there and get it done. Get some, start working on your game today.
Yeah. And if you can, if you find a bug, open an issue or fix it and contribute it back.
Yeah, just let us know.
That's how we work. All right then, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to close the stream off in a second. We will put all the links that we've talked about in the description section of the video when it's posted on YouTube. Please check out the YouTube channel. I think it's just YouTube/MonoGame, or is it MonoGame Team? I can't remember. I'm just gonna have to. Is it just MonoGame?
Yes.
We haven't got anyone sitting on that. Yes, it is just MonoGame.
Nope,
That's good.
I took it.
That was it. It's the Twitter account we've got someone sitting on, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, if you're the owner of @MonoGame Twitter account, you could do something really nice and just let us have it.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. All right then, guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Tom, for joining us once again. I don't know who I'm going to drag onto the live chat next month. Steve and Dom haven't been on for a while, but we might try and get
someone from the community to come along and chat about their experiences with their game, possibly. Yeah. So if there's any volunteers, just give me a message on Jitter and let me know. Okay, so have a good day, night or evening or morning, whatever it is where you are, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.